I still remember the day he walked in, rich, cold, and clearly used to getting his way. When he left me just a $1 tip, I laughed. But what I didn't know, that $1 was about to flip my whole life upside down. I wasn't ready for what came next. Hey fam, if you believe love can show up in the most unexpected ways, then hit that like button, subscribe for more real love stories, and grab your tea, 'cause this one is wild. Before him, my life was quiet, simple, predictable in a way that felt both safe and suffocating. I was just a regular black girl from a small southern town, the kind of place where everybody knows your name and your business too. Every morning, I'd tie my apron tight and head to the little cafe on Main Street, the one with the chipped mugs, wobbly chairs, and the smell of burnt espresso that somehow always lingered. I worked long hours, smiled through rude customers, and pocketed tips that barely covered my bus fare home. But I never let it show. I kept my head high, with a little sass tucked in my smile. Even on the hardest days, I held on to my dream. Art school, painting, colors that spoke louder than words. I used to sketch on napkins during slow hours, hiding them in the back of the receipt drawer like secrets. I didn't have the money, not even close, but that dream lit a little fire in me. Most people thought I was just another server with no direction, but I knew I was more. I was just waiting on life to notice me. And one day it did, though not at all how I expected. I remember the first time I saw him like it just happened yesterday. It was a rainy Tuesday, and the cafe was almost empty except for the regulars and a few students hiding from the weather. He walked in like he didn't belong. Tall, sharp suit, dark eyes that didn't look at people, just through them. His presence shifted the whole room. Everything about him screamed money and mystery. He didn't smile, didn't say much, just walked up to the counter and ordered a black coffee. No cream, no sugar, no chit-chat. I gave him my usual warm, "Hey there," and he just nodded, not even bothering to look up from his phone. When I brought his coffee to the table, I tried to lighten the mood. "Careful, it's strong enough to wake the dead," I joked. Nothing, not even a smirk. Just a quiet thanks. A few minutes later, he left, dropping a single-dollar bill in the tip jar. I stared at it, shook my head, and laughed under my breath. "Wow, big spender," I mumbled, loud enough for my coworker to hear. She rolled her eyes and said, "Probably one of those guys who think being rich means never being generous." But the thing is, he came back the very next day, same order, same cold silence, and then again and again, day after day, like clockwork. At first, I thought he was just stuck in a routine, but something in the way he started watching me, subtle, quiet, felt different. He wasn't flirting, he wasn't smiling, but he was definitely paying attention. The weirdest part? The tips stayed small, unpredictable, sometimes $1, sometimes a 5, sometimes nothing. I didn't know who he was, but I was starting to feel like this stranger was watching my every move, and not just as a customer. It was almost funny how he kept showing up like clockwork. Same time, same seat, same quiet energy. At first, I thought it was just habit, or maybe convenience. But over time, I started noticing the small things, how his eyes would follow me around the room when he thought I wasn't looking, how he always sat at a table with the best view of the counter, and how he never looked that focused on his phone anymore. He started asking little things, nothing deep, just casual stuff like, "Did you always work here?" Or, "What's good on the menu?" The kind of questions people ask to make small talk. But with him, it felt like effort. Then came the weirdest part, his tips. One day it was a crisp $20 bill folded neatly under his empty cup. The next, it was nothing at all. I couldn't figure him out. Most rich guys flaunt their money, but he was the opposite. It was like he was testing me, watching how I'd react. And to be honest, I didn't change a thing. Whether it was a dollar or 20, I still gave him the same smile, the same energy. One afternoon, he lingered longer than usual. I was wiping down a table nearby when he asked, "Do you paint?" It caught me off guard. I hadn't told him that, not out loud. Maybe he'd seen one of my napkin sketches left behind. "A little," I answered, trying not to sound too hopeful. He just nodded, like he was storing that answer for later. He was still cold, still quiet, but something was shifting. The way he looked at me, it wasn't just curiosity anymore. It was like he was trying to see if I was real, or just like everyone else in his world. It was a Thursday when everything changed. The cafe had just started to slow down for the afternoon, and I was bussing a table near the front when I noticed he had left already. No goodbye, no tip, just his usual half-empty coffee cup. I sighed and grabbed it, ready to rinse it out, when I saw something folded neatly underneath the saucer. A note. My name was written on the outside, in clean, strong handwriting. I looked around, confused, before I opened it. Inside, it read, "You're wasted here. Meet me for lunch tomorrow. Just lunch. No pressure. Jay." My heart jumped a little. I didn't even know his full name, and now he wanted to meet outside of work? I showed the note to my coworker, who immediately went full FBI mode, warning me that he could be a creep or worse. But something in my gut told me this wasn't about romance. Not yet, anyway. He hadn't shown me any of that. This felt different. I showed up at the lunch spot he mentioned, this quiet little bistro tucked behind a bookstore downtown. When I walked in, he was already there, suit off for the first time, just in a sweater and jeans. Still sharp, but less guarded. He stood up when he saw me. "Thanks for coming," he said, and for the first time, there was something warm in his voice. We didn't talk about anything fancy. He asked about my dreams, my art, what I wanted from life beyond the cafe. I told him everything. About how I used to sketch while watching cartoons as a kid, how I dreamed of art school but had to take care of my mom after she got sick, how I worked 2 jobs just to keep us afloat. He listened. I mean, really listened. No phone, no distractions. Just his eyes on me, taking in every word like it mattered. "I think you're capable of more," he said quietly, right before we parted. "If you let yourself be." I didn't know what he meant exactly, but that day, for the first time in a long time, I felt seen. Not for what I did, but for who I was trying to become. After that lunch, something between us shifted. He still came to the cafe every day, but now he stayed longer, spoke more, smiled, just a little. I noticed his posture change, his voice soften, and slowly he began letting pieces of his past slip through the cracks. He wasn't just some billionaire with a cold stare anymore. He became James, the boy who grew up with nothing, who lost his mom at 14, who built an empire because he was too afraid of being powerless again. He told me how, over the years, he'd stopped trusting people, said most of them only saw what he could give, not who he was. "They see the car, the watch, the bank account," he said one day, "but never me." I listened, really listened, because I understood what it felt like to be invisible in plain sight. I told him a little about me, too, about the nights I used to cry quietly in the back room of the cafe after a bad shift, about how I held onto my dreams even when they felt stupid. "Money fades," I told him once, without thinking, "but hearts stay if they're real." He looked at me for a long time after that, like the words landed deeper than I'd meant them to. That was the first day he touched my hand, just briefly, a brush of fingers, but I felt it all the way to my chest. He wasn't trying to impress me. He wasn't performing. He was just being. And for once, I wasn't trying to fix anyone. I wasn't dreaming about saving someone or being saved. We were just two people, slowly learning to trust again. And that, to me, felt more powerful than anything money could buy. It was a Saturday when he asked me out, not to dinner at some five-star restaurant or some extravagant yacht party like you'd expect from a man like him. Number, he said, wear something comfy. I'll pick you up at noon. That's all. I remember standing in front of my closet forever, overthinking every outfit, finally settling on jeans, a tee, and my favorite sneakers. Simple, me. When he pulled up, he wasn't in some flashy sports car. He drove an old truck. I laughed and asked if he borrowed it from a movie set. He smirked and said, "This is the real me." That was the first time I saw him loosen up. He took me to this quiet little park outside the city. Trees everywhere, families laughing, kids running around. In the middle was a line of food trucks, all serving different things. "You get to pick what we eat," he said, hands in his pockets like he was nervous. That made me smile. We ended up grabbing tacos and sitting on a picnic blanket he brought. No silverware, no servers, just us, the breeze, and the sound of real life around us. That's when he really opened up. He told me he hadn't been on a real date in years, not one where he didn't feel like he had to prove anything. "People expect me to be someone all the time," he said. "But with you, I feel like I can just be." I didn't say anything right away. I just looked at him, at the man who had once barely looked me in the eye, now sitting beside me with salsa on his cheek and a soft look I'd never seen before. I realized I was falling for him, not because of what he had, but because of what he hid, the gentle parts. The broken parts. The parts he didn't show anyone else. That day wasn't about money or status. It was about presence, laughter, being known. And as we lay on that blanket staring up at the sky, he reached for my hand. No words, no pressure, just a touch that said everything. I didn't pull away. I didn't want to. Falling for James felt easy, natural even. But staying in love with a man like him, that's where things got complicated. Once people started noticing we were spending more time together, the whispers came fast. At the cafe, customers began looking at me differently, some with curiosity, others with judgment. It was like suddenly I was no longer just the nice girl who serves the best lattes. Now I was the girl dating the billionaire. And that title came with weight I wasn't ready for. The real storm, though, came from his world, his circle, his friends, business partners, and especially his family. I met them once, and once was enough. They looked at me like I didn't belong, like I was something James had picked up during a phase he'd grow out of. One of them even said, right in front of me, "She's cute, but what exactly does she do?" I smiled politely, but inside I was burning. James saw it too. At first, he tried to brush it off. "They don't know you yet," he said. "They'll come around." But they didn't. And it hurt, not just the way they treated me, but the way he hesitated to stand up to them. For a while, he tried to keep our relationship quiet, almost like he was hiding me from the world he lived in. I started asking myself hard questions. Was I just a breath of fresh air in his otherwise stuffy life? Was I enough? One night, after a particularly awkward charity event where I'd been mistaken for a waitress twice, I confronted him. "Are you ashamed of me?" I asked. And the silence that followed was louder than any answer he could have given. That moment cracked something between us. I realized love wasn't just about soft touches and stolen kisses. It was about being chosen, fully, fearlessly, and in the open. James didn't say much that night, but his eyes, they said he knew he'd messed up. And for the first time since we'd started whatever this was, I wasn't sure where we were headed. All I knew was I couldn't stay small to fit into his world, not when I'd spent so long trying to grow. The morning after that charity event, something in me just snapped. I woke up with this tightness in my chest, like I'd been holding my breath for too long. All the feelings I had, love, confusion, hope, had turned into something heavier. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the girl staring back. She looked tired, dimmed, like she was shrinking herself just to fit into someone else's world, and I promised myself I'd never do that again. That same day, a gossip blog posted a headline: Billionaire's New Flame, Mystery Woman Spotted on James Carter's Arm. The picture was grainy, but it was clearly me standing next to him, my head tilted toward his shoulder. The comments were brutal, people calling me a gold digger, a social climber, everything but my name. That was my breaking point. I wrote him a letter. I couldn't face him. Not then. I told him that I cared deeply, but I wouldn't be hidden. I wouldn't be tolerated while the world judged me, and he stayed silent. If your love needs to be quiet, I wrote, then maybe it's not love at all. I left the note on his doorstep and disappeared. I packed up, left town, and started over, again. It hurt like hell, but I needed space to remember who I was before he ever walked into that cafe. Months passed. Life moved on, slowly but surely. I found a job at a small art gallery in a nearby city. Nothing glamorous, but it felt right. Peaceful. I spent my days surrounded by color, by brushstrokes that told stories I didn't have the words for. And in the quiet of those afternoons, I began to feel like myself again. Not James's girl, not the girl from the tabloid, just me. I hadn't heard from him since I left. No texts, no calls, nothing. A part of me wondered if that meant he'd let me go. Another part tried not to care, but truthfully, every time the door to the gallery opened, my heart skipped just a little. And then one day, he walked in. No security, no assistant, no suit, just him holding something wrapped in brown paper. My breath caught in my throat. I couldn't move. I couldn't even speak. He smiled, soft, nervous, and said, "I bought the gallery." I blinked. "For you," he added, voice low, "so you'd always have a place to paint, to grow, to be seen." And then he handed me the wrapped package. Inside was one of my napkin sketches from the cafe. "You were never small," he said. "I just needed to become a man who could love you out loud." After that day, everything changed, but not in the flashy fairy tale way you might expect. There wasn't some grand proposal with fireworks or paparazzi waiting outside. No, it was quieter than that, realer. He stayed, not just for the moment, but for the everyday. He helped me paint the walls of the gallery, hanging up lights and shelves with his sleeves rolled up, laughing when he couldn't figure out how to use a level. We weren't billionaire and barista anymore. We were just two people building something side by side. I started painting full time, big, bold pieces that held emotion I'd been burying for years. He managed the gallery behind the scenes, quietly, intentionally, never once trying to make it about him. He'd bring me lunch, sit on the gallery floor while I worked, and ask me about colors and feelings like they were business strategies. We hosted shows, brought in other artists, created a space where people felt something when they walked in, and every piece that sold felt like a piece of my old life healing. We traveled too, not to be seen, but to see. Tiny villages, hidden markets, art museums in quiet corners of the world. On one of those trips, in a little cafe in Lisbon, he slid a small velvet box across the table, not with a ring, but with a tiny paintbrush charm. "This is just a promise," he said, "to always choose you every single day." And he does. Even now, years later, he still leaves a $1 tip at the coffee shops we visit, just once in a while, with a sly little smile, like a secret only we share. It's his way of remembering how it all began. We didn't fall in love the way people expected. We didn't follow the rules, but we made something lasting, something ours. I didn't just end up with a man who had billions. I ended up with someone who finally saw me, loved me as I was, and built a life around that love. And in the end, that $1, it bought me a whole new world, and it was worth every single cent. So, yeah, that's how a $1 tip turned into a $1 billion heart. If this story made you smile, don't forget to like, comment, love wins, and subscribe for more stories just like this one. Thanks for listening to my story. Maybe yours is just one coffee away.